Ex-sniper with PTSD in a team that's mental?
That's the thing that killed my man.
That's not a predator, that's a sports hunter.
Well, we took a vote. Predator's cooler, right? Our big boy's a hunter. He brought his dogs with him.
Let's not mince words here. The Predator 2018 is a cinematic travesty. A film that managed to take everything that made the original Predator great and mangle it beyond recognition. What was supposed to be a triumphant return of an iconic franchise turned out to be a misfire of epic proportions. Directed by Shane Black, who ironically starred in the original 1987 film, this sequel, reboot, remake, whatever it was supposed to be, proved that even the most fearsome hunters can lose their edge when weighed down by a clunky script, disjointed tone, and a fundamental misunderstanding of what made its predecessors so iconic. So today, I'll hope you stay with me as I dissect whether the Predator got hunted down and brutally murdered by its own legacy. The production was as chaotic as a predator losing its invisibility cloak in broad daylight in Trafalgar Square. Shane Black was at the helm, a man known for his sharp wit and action-packed storytelling. He had the pedigree to bring something fresh to the table. Instead, we got a film that felt like it had been cobbled together by a committee who'd never actually seen the original Predator, let alone been in it. The most notorious aspect of the production was the casting controversy, involving Stephen Wilder Strigel, a registered sex offender who was inexplicably given a role in the film as a favour to Black. This baffling decision backfired spectacularly when Olivia Munn, who discovered Striegel's past, went public with the information. The studio scrambled to cut Striegel's scenes, but the damage was done. The film's release was overshadowed by this scandal, leaving a bitter taste before the opening credits even rolled. And then there were the reshoots, always a red flag in any production. After test audiences reportedly reacted poorly to the original ending, the film underwent extensive reshoots that fundamentally changed the third act. The results, a finale that feels disjointed and hastily stitched together, as if the filmmakers were desperately trying to fix a sinking ship, with duct tape and good intentions. With the score and sound design, it's an echo of better days. Henry Jackman's score for The Predator was an attempt to invoke the tension and excitement of Alan Silvestri's original 1987 masterpiece. But while Silvestri's music captured the raw, primal fear of being hunted in a hostile jungle, Jackman's efforts feels like a pale imitation. It's as if the score is trying to remind us of how we're supposed to feel. Without ever actually making us feel it. Leonard Bernstein famously said, "Music can name the unnameable and communicate the unknowable." Silvestri's score did exactly that, tapping into our deepest fears. Jackman's? Well, it merely hums along, trying to keep up with a film that's lost its way. The sound design, too, feels like it's going through the motions. The Predator's iconic clicks and growls are present, as is the unsettling hum of its thermal vision. Instead of enhancing the film's atmosphere, these sounds serve as little more than nostalgic callbacks. There's no sense of dread, no building tension, just a series of familiar noises that remind you of better films. In a franchise known for its ability to get under your skin, The Predator 2018 barely manages to apply moisturiser. Now, the plot itself is a tangled mess, a labyrinth of nonsense that seems more interested in throwing everything at the wall and seeing what sticks than in telling a coherent story.
Morons really making bets on whether a drug cartel has executed these hostages.
Absolutely. I believe that was implied.
Just check. I'm in for 20.
It's the kind of narrative that feels like it was cobbled together from the discarded ideas of better movies, with none of the coherence or logic that even a half-decent B-movie should have. The film opens with Quinn McKenna, a soldier who stumbles upon a predator ship that's crash-landed on Earth. In a move that defies all logic, he decides to mail some of the alien tech home, because apparently nothing screams secure handling of extraterrestrial artifacts like the good old postal service.
Mail what's in the pack, not the backpack. Hey, order.
One can't help but wonder if the writers were having a laugh when they came up with this, or if they genuinely believed that the US Postal Service could be trusted with advanced alien weaponry. But the absurdity doesn't stop there. McKenna's decision isn't just reckless, it's downright idiotic, setting off a chain of events that only make sense if you've completely disengaged your brain. Enter Rory, Quinn's son, who is on the autism spectrum, and, for reasons that defy both logic and taste, becomes the film's deus ex machina. Rory's condition is treated as a kind of superpower, allowing him to decipher Predator technology in a way that's both patronising and absurd. It's the kind of misguided representation that makes you wonder if the writers actually thought through the implications of their narrative choices, or if they just thought it sounded cool. The idea that Rory's autism somehow makes him the ultimate key to understanding alien technology is not only insulting, but also feels like a lazy narrative shortcut designed to bypass any real character development. And then we're introduced to the Loonies, a group of ex-soldiers with various psychological issues, each more of a caricature than a character. You've got the wisecracking comic relief, the grizzled veteran with a heart of gold, and the loose cannon who's just one bad joke away from being a complete stereotype.
Hey, Baxley, if your mom's vagina were a video game, it'd be rated E for everyone.
These characters are so thinly sketched that they feel more like placeholders than actual people. Their banter, intended to provide comic relief, instead feels forced and tonally jarring, clashing with the film's half-hearted attempts at horror. The film can't seem to decide whether it wants to be a horror thriller or a buddy comedy, and so it ends up being neither.
What's the big one, Doc? Is that like the mail?
You didn't even give a shit about us.
As if that weren't enough, the film introduces the ultimate predator, a genetically enhanced version of the classic creature, who's as subtle as a sledgehammer to the face. This CGI monstrosity is paraded around in a sterile lab environment like some kind of grotesque exhibit, completely missing the point of what made the original Predator so terrifying, its ability to outthink and outmaneuver its prey. Instead of a sleek, deadly hunter, we get a lumbering brute who's more laughable than lethal. The film attempts to sell this creature as an unstoppable force, but any sense of menace is undercut by its ridiculous appearance and the sheer implausibility of its existence. The plot holes in The Predator are so glaring that they practically demand attention. For instance, the film asks us to believe that Rory, a child, can not only operate alien technology, but also instinctively understands its function better than the actual predator species. Then there's a bizarre subplot involving the predator's supposed plan to upgrade themselves using human DNA, a concept so poorly explained and executed that it borders on nonsensical. And let's not forget the absurdity of a government that, despite knowing about the predators for decades, is still completely inept at dealing with them. The plot's climax is a cacophony of explosions, one-liners, and contrived plot twists that feel like the result of a brainstorming session, where everyone was throwing ideas around, and it ended up with this scene from Scanners. The final showdown, which should have been a tense, pulse-pounding encounter, instead feels like a rushed, incoherent mess. Characters make decisions that defy logic, and the film's attempt to tie everything together with a neat little bow is as satisfying as cold coffee. By the time the credits roll, it's clear that the Predator has lost its way, wandering aimlessly through a narrative jungle with no sense of direction and no hope of finding its way out. It's a film that tries to do too much and ends up doing nothing well, a misfire of epic proportions that leaves you wondering how something so fundamentally flawed ever made it to the big screen. So let's talk about the cast, though there's not much to say that's positive. Boyd Holbrook's Quinn McKenna is the kind of generic action hero you've seen 1,000 times before. He's got the chiselled jaw, the troubled past, and about as much depth as a puddle after a light drizzle. Holbrook does his best with the material he's given, but when the script is as flimsy as this, there's only so much an actor can do. Olivia Munn's Dr. Casey Brackett is another wasted opportunity. Munn brings a certain level of intensity to the role, but the film can't decide if she's a brilliant scientist or an action hero. The result is a character who's neither, just another cardboard cutout in a film full of them. It's frustrating to watch knowing Munn is capable, but she's ultimately hamstrung by a script that seems more interested in getting to the next explosion than in developing its characters. Sterling K. Brown's Will Traeger, the smirking government agent, is one of the few bright spots in this otherwise dreary ensemble.
I want the passenger, I want the pod. If it's not from here, I want it.
Brown delivers his lines with a level of snark and charisma that almost makes you forget how absurd his character's motivations are. But even his sharp wit can't cut through the film's overwhelming sense of mediocrity. It's like watching a master chef trying to whip up a gourmet meal using baked beans and pot noodles. There's only so much flair you can bring when the ingredients are this dire. And then we have the Loonies, a group of soldiers who seem to have been plucked from a mid-90s action flick and dropped into this film without any context. Played by actors like Keegan-Michael Key and Thomas Jane, these characters are supposed to be endearing, each with their own quirky trait that's meant to make them memorable. Instead, they're reduced to one-note stereotypes, the kind of characters who'd be more at home in a straight-to-DVD bargain bin.
A long time since I had a gun in my hand.
What's it feel like?
Like a gun?
Compared to the raw intensity and camaraderie of the original Predator team, this group feels like a bad joke, one that the audience is expected to laugh at, even though the punchline never quite lands. Now let's take a moment to discuss the practical effects, or rather, the lack thereof. The original Predator was a marvel of practical effects, with Stan Winston's legendary creature design creating a monster that felt both terrifying and real. For the Predator 2018, the practical effects were handled by Legacy Effects, the same studio that evolved from Winston's original team. And while there are glimpses of their craftsmanship in the film, they're buried under a mountain of CGI that smothers any sense of physicality or presence. The practical suits and animatronics, which should have been a highlight, are instead relegated to the background, overshadowed by digital effects that lack the weight and tangibility of their practical counterparts. The original Predator was a creature you believed could exist, with its tangible dreadlocks, menacing mandibles, and those piercing, unblinking eyes. In contrast, the ultimate Predator in this film feels like a cartoonish exaggeration, more suited to a video game than a live-action film, and video games would have done it better. It's a missed opportunity of monumental proportions, a squandering of talent that's as infuriating as it is disappointing. Now, the Predator 2018 ambitiously attempts to explore several themes, but like a hunter stumbling through the dark, it keeps missing the mark. The film's exploration of evolution, both in terms of the Predator's genetic enhancements and the human character's attempts to adapt, could have provided a compelling narrative thread. However, it's treated as little more than a gimmick, a shallow excuse to introduce a bigger, badder version of the Predator that ultimately falls flat. The idea of evolution is barely scratched at, leaving us with a creature that's more ridiculous than terrifying. The father-son relationship between Quinn and Rory is another theme the film clumsily tries to develop. Rory's autism is portrayed in a way that's meant to be empowering, but comes across as patronising and reductive. The film seems to use Rory's condition as a convenient plot device.
I'm not sure that you can.
Nice reverse psychology. I can do that too. Don't go fuck yourself.
You took my boy, so yeah.
Told ya.
Take this, son.
You out of your mind?
Turning him into a key figure in understanding and using Predator technology. Rather than exploring the real challenges and nuances of their relationship, the film reduces it to a narrative shortcut, bypassing any meaningful emotional depth. And then there's the psychological impact of war, embodied by the loonies, a group of soldiers each dealing with their own traumas. This could have been an opportunity to delve into the complexities of PTSD and the bonds formed in the face of shared adversity. But instead, the film uses their mental health struggles as little more than fodder for cheap laughs and out-of-place jokes.
What do you want to do with this guy? Sorry, buddy, that was a dumb question.
The potential for genuine, impactful storytelling is there, but it's squandered in favour of one-liners that fall flat and undercut any attempt at serious thematic exploration. In the end, The Predator is a film that desperately tries to say something profound, ends up garbling its message. The themes it touches on are barely developed, leaving the narrative feeling hollow and directionless, a hollow echo of the original's primal terror and suspense. When The Predator finally hit theatres, the reception was lukewarm at best. Critics and audiences alike were divided, with many expressing disappointment at the film's failure to live up to the legacy of its predecessors. Shane Black's attempt to inject humour and irreverence into the franchise clashed awkwardly with the horror elements that fans had come to expect, leaving the film with an identity crisis it couldn't shake. Financially, the film didn't exactly set the box office ablaze. It grossed $160 million worldwide against an estimated budget of $88 million. Not a complete disaster, but far from the blockbuster success the studio was likely hoping for. Compared to the cultural impact of the original, or even the respectable performance of Predators 2010, this entry felt more like a stumble than a stride. The film's mixed reception and underwhelming box office only served to further tarnish the franchise's reputation, leaving many to wonder if The Predator had finally run out of steam. Looking back at The Predator, it is clear that this film will be remembered more for its failures than its successes. While it doesn't quite reach the nadir of the franchise, that dubious honour still belongs to AVP Requiem, which I've watched for the first time in the last couple of days, it's certainly not the revitalisation that fans had hoped for. In fact, it's more likely to be cited as a cautionary tale of what happens when a film tries to juggle too many tones and ideas without understanding what made the original so iconic. The expanded lore and new elements introduced, such as genetic experimentation, autism as a superpower, the ultimate predator, might have been seeds for future instalments, but they didn't resonate strongly enough to leave a lasting impact. Instead, these ideas felt like desperate attempts to inject new life into a franchise that had long since lost its way. In the end, it's a film that was doomed by the very expectations it sought to exceed. Shane Black, armed with wit and a flair for action, was unable to capture the elusive essence that made the original Predator a masterpiece of tension and terror. Instead, the film became ensnared in its own traps, overly reliant on nostalgia, weighed down by a convoluted plot, and outmatched by the very legacy it sought to honour. For fans of the original, this film might feel like a disappointing echo of a once great Raw. It's a reminder that not every franchise needs to be revived, and that sometimes the best way to honour a legacy is to bury the fluffer and let it rest. The Predator isn't the absolute worst entry in the franchise, though it certainly gives AVP Requiem a run for its money, but it's certainly a contender for the most misguided. If you're a die-hard fan, you might find a few moments of enjoyment, fleeting glimpses of what could have been, but if you're hoping for the same intensity and thrill that the original delivered, you're likely to be left feeling that this hunt wasn't worth the chase. So did the Predator get hunted down and horrifically murdered by its own legacy? Absolutely. But the positive is that the legacy of the original remains victorious, while this latest entry comes just another forgotten trophy on the wall of sci-fi misfires. I've been Geeklectica. If you enjoyed this critical takedown and want to join in the hunt for more insights into the world of sci-fi, horror, fantasy and film, be sure to like, comment and subscribe. And stick around, because next up we're delving into a prequel with Prey. So will this be just another letdown, or a Sweat Lodge's transcendental experience with American Indians thrown in? Hit that notification bell so you don't miss out. But please, please, please drop your thoughts in the comments. Did the Predator deserve its fate, or was it just misunderstood?